Next, let's explore the H or harmonic synthesis engine inside the tELHARMONIC. This is based on additive synthesis. Now, unlike what some people think, additive synthesis is not anything that adds harmonics. Wavefolding, distortion, they add harmonics, but they're not additive synthesis. What this refers to is taking individual components of sounds, sine waves, sometimes called partials, and mixing them together to create a brand new sound. These sine waves are spaced at integer intervals. That means the first harmonic is your fundamental, the second harmonic is 2 times the frequency of the fundamental, the third harmonic is 3 times, and so forth. The harmonic synthesis engine inside the tELHARMONIC is based on Thaddeus Cahill's Old Telharmonium of 1897, and that's partially where this module got its name from. It was a huge thing that used mechanics to generate these sine waves, not unlike a tone wheel organ such as the Hammond. This particular implementation has 24 different sine waves or partials, and it does have 3 different voices of those 24 harmonic sounds. I'm going to start off using this as a typical oscillator, and then focus more on using it at its strength, creating your own waveforms using harmonics. Here's this basic raw tone. I'm going to turn sustain on for the VCA. Basically, all 24 harmonics are playing at the same time. Flux and Centroid act like a bandpass filter to decide which harmonics you hear. Centroid is the center, and flux is how broad that band is. So when I have a very narrow flux turned full clockwise at its purest, I can go through those individual harmonics, and you kind of see the result on the spectrograph. Flux is not so narrow that it only listens to one harmonic at a time. It gets a little narrow band around it, but still pretty focused in its sound. Then we can go ahead and broaden out flux to get a more gentle sweep. Here some high harmonics come in. Now it's just a rippling through the sound. And here it's almost like an all-pass or phase shift. Go ahead and get this out of the way so you can see my Centroid a little bit better. Now, using that bandpass filter analogy, you could kind of treat this as a complex sound source and a bandpass filter, using Centroid as the cutoff frequency. Well, that plus what note you're playing. So let's go ahead and have a little bit of fun hooking up some different control voltage sources to the Centroid. Again, I'll go back to my mod wheel control, number 5 on the FH1. Take that output, bring it to Centroid, whose connection is actually down here through an attenuverter. Let's go ahead and go full positive for start. Added to this knob. I'll start at its lowest setting. Now I can use the mod wheel as sort of a wah-wah effect. I can also envelope it. Now, since it does have an attenuverter, I don't need to worry about all this craziness of inverting and offsetting the envelope. I just go ahead and take that connection straight from one of my envelope outputs. Now you have very much an enveloped bandpass filter type of sound. And then you can play around with how narrow, basically with the cues of the filter, playing with flux. Now you say, boy, that sounds just like a resonant filter. But really, all filters are doing are filtering out or focusing on specific harmonics. That's what this synth engine is doing. So as long as we're treating this as a synth voice, let's use some other synthesis techniques. Of course, I can obviously use another filter, but also it has FM inputs. It has a dedicated FM input for the entire oscillator, And also, you can always try frequency modulating these individual inputs. Now, there is no attenuator on the FM input here. So what I'm going to do is take the audio out from, say, my sawtooth. Make Noise recommends you use a purer wave, like a sine wave or triangle, but I only have sawtooth and square on my Mother 32, so that's life. Going in A on a VCA, since I might want to eventually envelope this. Take the output of that VCA and come into the FM input. Let's go ahead and get a little less radical here. Start using the gain on the VCA to turn up what's going to, in essence, be the FM depth. Maybe I'll tune this down an octave. Maybe that's a bit low, but... Linear FM, fairly well behaved. Rather than leave it cranked up all the time, let's go ahead and envelope that depth. Take maybe another output from this envelope generator. Take that to my control voltage input. Cranked up all the way right now. No effect. Increasing the depth. That's one way to FM this module. Now, as I've hinted before, the flux control is a little bit slow responding. You don't really get very satisfying effects out of that. Take the FM input over to flux. Hear a little bit of shift. That's probably the Centroid. Not much going on here. Don't really hear an effect, but you will hear more over on the Centroid. Now, there's an interesting effect with the Centroid. It doesn't really deal with high frequencies all that well. Can I crank this up? Even though I'm in tune between my modulating oscillator and the tELHARMONIC, reduces the drift here because the scope is synchronized to the Mother 32. You still hear some roughness to the wave. That's basically because the frequency, I believe, is going above how fast this oscillator can track that input. So you get sort of an aliasing effect that really dirties up that particular input. But you can use that to your advantage by enveloping it. Just getting a little bit of dirt at the start of the sound. Or go back and use normal linear FM. A little bit of envelope back to Centroid. Bring in a normal waveform, such as our square wave on the Mother. A bit of filter. Just the square wave. Just the tELHARMONIC. Maybe increase its input. Go ahead and overdrive the Mother 32's input a little bit. Mix them together. More complex sound. But it's really a shame to use an additive synthesis oscillator as if it was just another complex waveform VCO. Its real fun comes in creating your own sound by mixing those harmonics to taste. Go ahead and take the mix back to the tELHARMONIC. Put my filter cut off all the way. Take out the FM for now. Take out the modulation for now. Let's get back into dialing in what harmonics we want to play with. I'm going to go ahead and drone this machine for now. Go ahead and set very pure focus with the flux control. Decide what harmonics I like. I'm going to say I like that harmonic right there. If I always want that harmonic to be present, I press the H lock button. That locks that harmonic on. You can also send a trigger signal to this input to do the same thing. Now we're going to always use that harmonic, as long as flux is not all the way counterclockwise or off. Let's choose another harmonic. Let's say I like that harmonic as well. I'll lock that in. Maybe let's go ahead and lock that on. So I've created a particular waveform here. And you can see the harmonic spectra, where I've got 3 strong harmonics. That beating you here is actually the interval detuning those 3 voices in this machine. I'll go ahead and choose different musical intervals. I'm overdriving a bit here. Something a little bit purer there. Auto drone mode. Now that I've locked these harmonics on, I can still go ahead and sweep the other harmonics. Let's go ahead and get our envelope back on the Centroid. So I've always had those 3 harmonics that I locked present. And then I'm also sweeping the other harmonics using an envelope to the Centroid. Narrow or broad. And now you're starting to hear a little bit of an organ-like character. Again, this technique of adding these partials is very similar to a tone wheel organ like a Hammond. And again, you can always add in your other oscillator if you want to. Nice sound. If you want a clear harmonic lock, either turn flux full counterclockwise or just press and hold the H-lock button until it turns off again. Then you go ahead and create a brand new harmonic mix. The cool thing about having an H-lock trigger input on this is that if you want to, you can create some generative patches where you sweep through the harmonics by narrowing down your flux and playing with your centroid amount, and then maybe send random triggers to go ahead and lock on random harmonics. Just remember to reset them by turning flux all the way to the left, which is all harmonics present at once. Let's go ahead and choose an interval, maybe a little bit of detune. We're back to 3 o'clock, which is close to unison, but since I've detuned it just a little bit, I have a nice fat voice here. I am approaching plus or minus 5 volts, getting some pretty high peaks there that are above that. I might need to turn down my drive to the Mother 32's input not to overdrive it. Anyway, we'll play with this music theory more later. Let's go back to unison mode.